High steps into the end zone. Baylor capitalizes on the muff punt, and they strike first.
This is the Coach's Smoke Barbecue Baylor pregame show on Sikkim 365 Radio.
They go to the eye. Play action. Bohannon back in the end zone, and a touchdown for Baylor. Second catch of the drive, and it's good for 6.
The Baylor pregame show is also presented by the Nitchie Group.
Shapen, a soft loft, and it's caught inside the 10. Drew Estrada.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Well, good morning. Good morning on this last Saturday in November, a couple of days after everybody probably stuffed themselves with some pretty good food, enjoyed football the last couple of days, and a huge weekend that continues to decide who's going to play in the Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma State knows they're in it. Oklahoma can still get in it, and Baylor has a chance if they win and Oklahoma doesn't beat Oklahoma State in Bedlam. We also have the game in the Big Ten that has major college football playoff implications with Michigan hosting Ohio State, plus some evidence the last couple of days in college football as well. I'm David Smoak with Paul Catalina to my left, Craig Smoak to my right. Armstrong Sims running the mothership on this kind of a cool, damp day in Central Texas. Baylor and Texas Tech will kick off at just after 11 o'clock. And a lot of news when it comes to coaches moving and staying. And we'll get into that. The text line's open at 254-339-1122. And the YouTube channel, 365 Sports, is up as well. All right, so Baylor and Texas Tech. Lots of emotions in this game. Tech, of course, with their head coach, Joey McGuire, next year, the former Baylor assistant coach. And I had somebody reach out to me on Twitter yesterday, guys, that said, so how are we going to handle this with Joey McGuire coaching the opposing team? He's not going to be in the stadium today. And I know that that was initially some sort of a possible question. And I think Baylor has absolutely moved on from that. I think they proved that with what they did, beating Oklahoma, then following up with a win against Kansas State.
Yeah, I think that, and I said this on the show on Wednesday, I think whatever Joey McGuire might give them as far as preparation might help them look more prepared than they would have not having a coach that was on the staff less than a month ago of the team that you're playing, which is kind of unprecedented in college football. But I don't think that when it comes down to ultimately the in-game planning and the adjustments you'd have to make, that advantage he would get if he was sitting there in the booth, you're not going to have that. So, yeah, there might be a little better prepared than they would have been, but I don't expect it to be some sort of, look, this isn't, 1910 football where, like, you could cover yourself in mud and pretend to be on the other team. It's a little different than that.
Look, if they have a problem with Joey McGuire out Xing and Ozing them or being able to still, 3 weeks after his departure, figure out what they're doing, then that's on the coaching staff. Yeah. I mean, that's on them and them alone, and not anything having to do with Joey McGuire. I haven't been worried about Joey McGuire's insight the entire time that we've been counting down to this game. I'm sure there's some things he knows. I'm sure there's some things that he could pass along. But, again, if he's got that much insight that 3 weeks after he left and them knowing full well they're going to play a team that's got his insight and they're not ready for that, then they don't deserve to be walking away with a win today. So I'm not worried about that at all. I wouldn't be worried about it even if I knew full well he was providing insight. And I know what was said a couple weeks ago by Mac Rhodes that he was going to talk with Kirby Hocutt, and I know that Joey has said, oh, well, like the last place I want to be is McLean Stadium. I don't believe for one single second, with all due respect to him, I don't believe for one single second he's just all shucks in this. I think for 100% certainty, he knows this would be a huge win for his football program that he's building up right now, and even though he's not fully in charge, I mean, he's still going to get some of the credit for it. You don't think if they win this game today in some roundabout way, they would close the regular season with a win? It's his former team. It's a shift in power in the Big 12, potentially looking forward, ruining Baylor's chances to get into the Big 12 title game. So I think the Sonny Cumbie-led Red Raiders with a little input from Joey McGuire are going to be fully ready for whatever they can be ready for, but I would expect Baylor to have some curveballs of their own.
We will also today get into college basketball. Baylor men in the Bahamas winning against Michigan State and cruising in the second half. We're going to hear from James Akinjo after the game. He was named the tournament MVP because he had a fantastic game yesterday. His first couple of games a little bit maybe out of whack as far as his speed, the tempo, as he continues to be a guy that they have, of course, running their offense. Gonzaga beaten late last night. We'll get into that. Plus the Baylor women played earlier this morning to try to win a tournament against Houston as well in Cancun. 254-339-1122, the YouTube chat room. About to dig in with you on that. We'll get to that as well in just a second. Now, let's discuss Baylor football. The quarterback situation, we don't know for sure, but we have a pretty darn good feeling Blake Shapen will start today for Baylor, and I'm fine with that. I think Gary Bohannon, he won the quarterback job for a reason, but I think Blake Shapen, it wasn't a Chandler Morris moment where he just drilled Baylor and kind of Baylor humiliated a very good defense. You don't have much film on him. Now they've got film on Blake Shapen in 1 week, but I just think that's Blake Shapen. I think he's pretty good.
Well, yeah, and look, if Gary Bohannon plays today, he either had the best hamstring treatment ever that's been assembled on planet Earth, or he wasn't hurt that bad in the first place. And given how he left the field and how hamstrings work, I would assume we're going to see Blake Shapen, and that's probably better off for Baylor in the short term. In that, you're not going to. If you do win this game, and if Oklahoma State wins tonight, you're going to want to have the most potential for Gary Bohannon to be healthy for that game. And even if he's not, then you want Blake Shapen to have as many reps as he can going into a game against a defense that is insanely tough.
Yeah, I mean, Blake Shapen, I'm expecting to play. I think especially with the cold and the weather, I don't know how a hamstring would react to that, and plus I just don't expect him to play anyways, even if it was 100 degrees outside. I just feel like it'd be a little bit too quick of a turnaround, especially given the amount of pain he seemed to be in last Saturday. I mean, I know that was in the moment, and he's had treatment since then, but it's cold. I feel like that tightens up the muscles, and I just don't think that if he's unable to run the football, then he does much good for you, honestly. I think Blake Shapen can handle throwing duties, and I think he can scamper a little bit as well. So I think you should have 100% confidence in Blake Shapen based on what we saw last week, and I think the having tape on him is a little bit overrated, to be quite frank with you, because what do they have, 2 quarters? They don't have that based on any – like Baylor's had an entire week knowing that Blake Shapen could start this game and have been able to play in as a result. They had no idea he was going to play last weekend in Manhattan. They had no plan for him to play last weekend in Manhattan. So Tech's got film. They've got 5 minutes in a second quarter and a third and a fourth quarter, and that's pretty much what they've got. So if that tells them the whole tale and lets them break down Blake Shapen, that too is a problem. I don't expect it to be the case, and I expect him to, be a surprise today in some ways because we haven't seen a lot of him, but we're going to see a lot of him today most likely.
All right. Also, there is Bedlam tonight in what could be an amazing game and has been in the past, but Oklahoma has dominated that series. Oklahoma State the favorite because of how good they are and how good they've been. The one loss to Iowa State on the road, but they have been they've just been the best team from start to finish in the Big 12. Baylor at times has had that opportunity and have been close to it, but again, the loss to TCU is still something that comes back to get them. There are 3 scenarios for the Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma State that's in. We mentioned that. If Oklahoma wins tonight, they're in. If Baylor wins today and Oklahoma State wins tonight, Baylor's in. But if Baylor loses to Tech, it doesn't matter about Oklahoma and Oklahoma State tonight in Bedlam. Also, Sonny Cumbie retained by Joey McGuire as far as he's the interim head coach ever since Matt Wells was fired. He will be still with the staff again with Joey McGuire moving forward. And then there's the story about Sonny Dykes, and this has been one that really has been perhaps not the worst, the best kept secret, headed to TCU. And Rhett Lashlee, who Lastly is going from Miami to SMU. There are still some places that have not confirmed that as far as the TCU or SMU, but that is also one that is happening as well.
Boy,
also, Dave Clawson has been renewed on a long-term extension by Wake Forest yesterday.
Boy, SMU handled that really well. I think that was an abomination of a handling of the situation by Sonny Dykes and company, by everybody involved, really. You can't let them play their season out. I mean, that's why I think the whole Joey McGuire thing, I understand it. Not going to get mad at him and point fingers, but I think it sets a really bad precedent, and that's why everybody was reacting like, whoa, wait a second here. That's not directly affecting, what we're talking about with Sonny Dykes and all of that, but it's just there's a lot of focus on the next year before the year's already over with, and that's a problem because SMU might have had their season completely sidetracked because Sonny Dykes is sitting there talking to TCU behind the scenes. I mean, you can't tell me you watched SMU since those rumors started and tell me that's the same football team as before those rumors started. It's not at all. There's clearly something going on there, and it's not like injuries. I know Danny Gray's missed time and stuff like that, but I think that is a direct cause of not just the Sonny Dykes stuff, but a lot of it just seems to timing-wise line up. So I think I don't know how you put that back in the box with the coaches, but man, it seems like it's getting worse and not better. The complaints with NIL and all that stuff was like, well, coaches can leave, after a season or after a guy signs a scholarship, and that led us to the transfer portal and all that. But how are we going to start accommodating for coaches just leaving out of the blue? Because here's the thing, like Joey McGuire, for example, I understand why and all of that, but even if his players were cool with it, you still left him in the middle of the year on the way to a Big 12 championship run. And I just think that's messed up. And in the case of SMU, you had this great run. Tanner Mordecai, he's getting Heisman talk early on this season, all this, and all of a sudden here comes this TCU job, and they just completely hit the rails. And I just think that sucks, man. That sucks for those seniors at SMU. It sucks for anybody who's being affected by these coaching changes. And I know you can't help it and put it all back in the box, but man, it's just happening way too often and way too early now.
Well, even if it doesn't happen, if it's close to happening or realistically happening, we saw it in person when Baylor, and it was twofold. It wasn't just that Art Briles was potentially leaving for Texas. It was that they had a little too much fun as a team and as a staff in Arizona and maybe got a little too relaxed. But Art Briles potentially going to Texas hung like a cloud over that one game.
Yep.
Just one game in January. So if this is happening in November, October even, like that's just you cannot control that. And the only thing you can do is your head coach that said, listen, guys, I'm not leaving, but no one believes the coaches when they are. No. So even if the coaches trust or the players trust the coach, I mean, nobody believes them because you don't know what kind of money they're throwing.
And here's the other thing: is it's all revolves around recruiting.
Yeah,
everything in college football revolves around recruiting. It all revolves around a complete crapshoot to begin with. And I'm sorry, but hey, this guy's got to go early and bail because he's got to go recruit new players for his team. How about the current players? How about the guys that he talked to mom and dad about playing for him and the offseason and all of that? And so he's got to go get new guys now. So little Johnny that you were talking about, you love so much and you can't wait to coach him his senior year and all that. Like, oh, well, I meant all that, but I'm going to throw that to the side because I got to go get the new guy from Denton Geyer. I got to make sure my football team's good next year. You know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah, in fact, I do understand what you mean. And I got a text from the 281. This is a guy that has been in touch now for the last few weeks and a few things about coaching changes. And we will discuss Dave Aranda and Baylor going forward as well. College football, this is a little bit lengthy, but it's exactly what both of you are saying. It's bigger than coaching changes. College football, a land where grass is greener, players leap into a portal, spoiled coaches threatening to leave via subtle hints through agents, only to extort their schools for a larger purse in exchange for a stay, or leaving for another for more. And schools using players as NIL tokens to promote a brand and make them all rich, a land where ADs are enablers and worse. At the root of all of it is the lack of character for which none should be proud as the children watch and learn. It's all about lack of commitment brought about by greed, where every man has his price and you can convince them to do anything you want to do if you have more money than your collegiate neighbor. College football is a world of dancing whores, and if U-Hauls would be attending their funerals, pathetic. I want none of it. That's from D. Now, there is a little bit of a trend that we have seen so far in this offseason. Dykes going from SMU to TCU is from a, right now, non-Power 5 school across the street to one that's in the Big 12. But...
And a rival, too.
Yeah, and a rival, too. And a team that he just beat where there was a little friction as well. But now you have schools like Cincinnati and Baylor and a few others where they have coaches who will not be leaving. As we told you on Tuesday with Dave Aranda, that depending on when Baylor's season ends, there will be an announcement about extending his contract. And we mentioned that on Tuesday. And, of course, a few others had it in the last couple of days as well.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they basically just said what you said. But I guess when they have, the national reporter in their profile, that means that it's true, as opposed to if you're just, somebody in Waco, Texas, close to the scene with maybe better connections and not, as much on the end of the rumor mill. That's fine. I understand people need like the big voice to tell them things and make them feel like it's absolutely true. But sometimes the people below that know things too, especially when they're closer to the situation. But hey, Pete Thamel said it, so now it's true. And I don't mean that as any disrespect towards him, more or less towards those folks who had a big reaction, really just like one or two people in particular that, oh, well, you didn't tell us anything. Well, what difference did what did Pete Thamel say that was any different than what you said? Not a dadgum thing. So I'm thinking of one guy in particular on the boards who really had an interesting response. Sounded like a guy with just an axe to grind anyways. And I hope he's listening right now because I wonder how you felt when that Pete Thamel tweet came out. I bet you celebrated it, which is kind of funny, as hypocritical as that is. But, yeah, you had that a few days ago. Now at this point, Pete Thamel followed it up. Ross Dellinger followed it up. I mean, they had it, probably 48 hours, 24 hours later or so. That he was going to be signing an extension, that they were working on one. And I know that doesn't completely rule it out still, because there's still, plenty of people that are going to say, well, until the ink is dry and, well, until all the chairs are settled on the deck of the Titanic. That's true. There could always be more movement, and you never know. But I've been saying that I feel good about Dave Aranda and that I'm not that worried about it. I know I wasn't ready to jump all in with your report the other day just because, again, there's too many moving parts to know, what's what even when somebody says it. But I don't think Dave Aranda is the type of guy that's going to talk and mention a contract extension or allow talk about a contract extension to be floating out there and then turn around and go sign with USC. He just does not strike me as that type of man in any way, shape, or form. So I think that, kudos to you for having that out there. It was exactly what those other guys reported a while later, and hopefully it stays on that path and sticks in that direction, because I think Dave Aranda is a good fit for Baylor and vice versa, and I hope to be covering his teams for a while. Yeah,
I think that coaches are seeing that again, like this said, that from D in the 281, and D's not wrong in almost anything that he said there, but the grass isn't always greener, especially when things can change so rapidly in college football. Consistency is one thing that I think, because we've seen this a little bit more in college basketball and guys staying at places and not necessarily jumping around. They had that time where if a guy won 22 games at Memphis, he was going to go and take a better job. Well, now it's the NCAA tournament. Why not stay at Memphis and make them really good? You can get them into the finals. Same thing with Scott Drew at Baylor. Like, consistency, quality of life is a lot better for coaches, and instead of just always like, oh, well, Baylor's a great place to be, but man, USC and LSU, those are even better. But are they really? I mean, if the money is almost the same, and the stress on your life is better, whether it's Baylor or Iowa State and we can talk about that one in a second, or wherever you are. I mean, what are you necessarily chasing? Winning is winning. So if you win at Baylor, you win at Florida, you win at LSU, you win at USC, you win at Washington. The national championship's the same for whatever school you're in it. A national championship or a conference championship doesn't weigh more at Alabama than it does at Clemson than it does if it happened here. I mean,
to me, it would be even heavier and even more important if you are getting that and you're not a part of the so-called blue bloods, whatever sport we're talking about.
But to his point, to the texture and how it all kind of trickles up and not down, just the bad stuff rolls down. Quite frankly, I mean, there are benefits to being at USC versus Iowa State if you're Matt Campbell. I mean, there are. Being in Los Angeles, being in Southern California versus being in Iowa, I'd choose Southern Cal. Now, there's other factors to that, like traffic or politics or price of living and things like that you also have to take into account. That nobody really takes those things. They just say like, oh, it's living in LA versus living here. Oh, it's making this money versus. Well, there's other things. There's taxes. There's a lot of stuff that comes into play that we don't really consider. You just look at location and money figure, and boom, that's all there is to it. That's the whole story. No, it's not really the whole story or even half the story, quite frankly. Relationships are important too, but. Yeah, I said this the other day. I said, if you're Dave Aranda, because I said it on the podcast with Grayson, and I think I said it on Thursday maybe, eventually there's going to be somebody, and I don't know if it's Dave Aranda or if it's somebody else, but eventually there's going to be somebody, and I think Art Briles was probably going to be that guy because he was getting attention, and the Texas thing, that was very, very close to happening, but ultimately when that fell through, I feel like he was going to be around here for a while. And I don't know if there was going to be too many places that were going to go and scoop him up because I think he knew what a situation that he had. They were winning 10 games a year. They were set up recruiting-wise. They'd won 2 Big 12 titles. They were in the mix to win a third one very, very soon. They were knocking on the door of the playoff. I have no doubts they were going to get to that. So what was the benefit for him? Other than just, do you want 20,000 more people in the stadiums on Saturdays? Do you want a couple extra million? Do you want, the coaches show? What is it that you want that puts you over the top? For Dave Aranda, I don't see him needing the spotlight and the Broadway and all of that. I think some coaches just look at their situations and go, man, Art Briles won 10 games a year at Baylor. And Matt Rule came in, won 10 games a year, or won 10 games one time. Dave Aranda should be winning his 10th game later on today. Think about it, one of those guys just stuck around for 7 years, what they could possibly win. And if it's Dave Aranda or if it's somebody else, somebody's eventually going to figure that out, that yes, there's brighter lights and yes, there might be bigger boosters and bigger cities, but man, you can stick around somewhere for 15, 20 years or even 10 and carve out one hell of a niche for yourself.
You mean like Scott Drew?
Well, exactly like Scott Drew.
And there's something that we also need to consider. When you see a lot of these coaches, and it's not just Dave Aranda. I mean, James Franklin, of course, he was at a Blue Blood, getting offered jobs at a Blue Blood, Penn State, and wherever he was going to go. But, okay, when you think about Dave Aranda in particular, and I think about when we talk to him at Big 12 Media Days a lot, because he's kind of the right person to hear from this. Chris Kleiman kind of echoed these sentiments when we talked to him at Big 12 Media Days. The COVID year changed a lot of people in America, and it should have. You have to be introspective when all the things that happened to us in 2020 happened and be realistic. And what Dave Aranda saw is a person he is keenly aware of his players' mental health and emotional capacity and all these different things. I think that, staying in a place and not, having to uproot and do all these different things, because you saw the most stressful things that can happen. You saw how that can uproot people. I think, a compassionate guy like Dave Aranda, it's not going to ring his bell to just uproot after everything that, in particular, he's gone through the last 2 years with this group of guys.
Yeah, I think it's as big as anything is that it's kind of quick. It's kind of just you were here for a second. And look, man, it's college football, so anything could change at any moment. You know what I mean? There could be somebody that just bolts after this weekend that opens up the such and such job all of a sudden, and somebody's going to have to go and take that. I'm not under any illusion that Dave Aranda is going to plant his flag and be in Waco, Texas for 45 years and be the next Grant Taft, but he could be, and why not? If that's fine for him, I think the point is that we're saying is that not every coach has to go find success at a Baylor or a TCU or SMU and then have to go to the USC or the Florida to feel like they're validated in some way, or that's the only way that you can win championships. But unfortunately, the way college football set itself up is that's how a lot of head coaches feel, is that's the only way to win championships is to go to the blue blood, where you can recruit the 5 stars a lot easier, you have more money, you have bigger stadiums, and you have all that. But I think there's some coaches proven, whether it's a Luke Fickell at Cincy, and look, he could still be on the move for all we know, although he seems to be settled in right now. But there's other examples of guys that if they actually stick around, no, it's not Los Angeles or it's not Austin or Gainesville, but damn, for a few years, Waco or Fort Worth or wherever could be pretty good for you.
Well, Baylor has proven that. If you think about their history, Grant Taft was here for a long, long time, and eventually then they wanted to move into a different direction. He became the AD. But he was here for a long, long time. It was a fit. Kim Mulkey was here for a long, long time and won 3 national championships and was a fit until there was some extenuating circumstances. Either way you want to look at it, one side or the other. And then you have Scott Drew, who came in the middle of a disaster and won a national title and is really good again after beating Michigan State and winning that tournament, the battle for Atlantis over the weekend. And they're in a conference that's really, really, really good. And so why not Dave Aranda in Baylor, as he has even said in media sessions and on one-on-one interviews that he loves it here and it's a fit.
And I don't mean just even Dave Aranda in talking about this. I mean, I know that's like the main focus because that's the story and that's who we're talking about and who we cover. But I mean that just in general. I mean that for Luke Fickell or for anybody who's not at one of those 20 schools or so. That you can carve something out. Now, do I think Luke Fickell's going to be at Cincinnati for forever? No. But if he stays around there, do I think he's going to have massive success and walk away as like the most decorated Cincinnati coach of all time? Probably, yeah. So is that cool for him, or does he need to eventually get money whipped to go to the next SEC spot or whatever? Look, it's hard for these guys to turn down, and it's just not an era anymore where people stick around anywhere for 40 or 50 years. I mean, it's kind of a miracle Saban stayed at Alabama, but where else could he possibly go? He's at the tippity top. There's nowhere else for him to move that makes any sense. But yeah, I just think that what we've seen this past week, even though it looks like maybe Matt Campbell to USC or maybe Fickell gets involved again, or maybe I think the Aranda thing's kind of done, but maybe even just what if. But I do think there is some benefit in sticking around and carving out your own niche, and I hope that's what Dave Aranda's planning on doing because he's a damn good football coach.
I just wanted to read this text from Diane before we switch topics. Great one. I think there's a generational shift as well. Regardless of profession, there's a shift from aggressive workplace attitudes versus quality of life. And I think that's very true. And we can in Waco you can call it the Scott Drew rule. And look, Scott Drew, and no offense to Kim Mulkey and 3 women's basketball national titles. I'm not trying to knock, but when you talk about the non-revenue sports compared to revenue sports, Pepperdine and Fullerton have won NCAA baseball titles. It's not necessarily made all their other sports better. But when you win one of the big 2, and that's men's basketball or football, it changes your whole athletic department long term. Mm-hmm. And that probably couldn't have been better timing for Baylor football to have a coach who's in demand, but also at a school where the other big program just won the national title, because any of those inklings of, well, the big things don't happen at places like this, that's over. Because the big thing did. On April 6th, it did. That was one of the big ones, the big 2. And now, does men's basketball dictate what football happens? No, but it certainly puts enough seasoning on to where you can be like, look, if we could do that in football here.
Look across the board in the athletic department, but you're right. When football and men's basketball do it, it's a different animal. Now, I'm going to read a lot of your text, and then we'll just kind of, you guys saturate and marinate on a few of them. And I'll read like 5 or 6, and you can respond to any of them because a lot of people are gone on the text line. Of course, a lot of people, good morning, thank you very much. Let's see, some saying beat Baylor, win Tech, Oklahoma fans saying we need Baylor to lose, etc. I mentioned Gonzaga, Scotty B, and I mentioned that off the top, or not off the top, but early on they were beaten late by Duke. Kansas was stunned by Dayton as well. The Sonny Dykes story to TCU, we've mentioned that as well. From Kyler. What's up, guys? No hate, but I think I need Tech to beat Baylor and win. Boomer sooner. Okay, I get that.
I don't think you need. I think you know that you need Texas Tech to beat Baylor.
Bo Stacker. No disrespect to Cincinnati, but would they be undefeated if they were in another conference? I think I'm not so sure about them being one of the 4 best teams in the country. Also, go ahead. We'll respond to that.
I mean, that's fair to say that you don't think they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. I mean, you can only play the schedule in front of you, and certainly they don't have as tough of a schedule as most. But I feel like the couple of tests, Notre Dame, they beat Notre Dame. That's a win that you still have to give them a lot of credit for. And I know there hasn't been a whole lot between them, but, then here comes that SMU game, and everybody's, that was hyped up to be something. But obviously Sonny Dykes took some of the sting out of that, quite frankly. But they slapped around SMU. So, I mean, you can only play who's in front of you. They slapped around the team that we thought could give them a test. But, look, I think Houston's going to be a great game. I think if they beat Houston, then what else do they need to do? They're not going to be capable of having 6 top 25 wins or some of these other opportunities. They don't have the benefit of a Mississippi State bouncing in and out of the top 25 rankings to count as a top 25 win for them, or one AAC team loses and another one bounces back up. No, they lose, they just kind of fall out. And so they can only play who they have. They beat the best team on their schedule in Notre Dame. They beat one of the teams that looked like a contender in SMU. And if they turn around and they beat Houston as well, then, I mean, I feel like you got to give them an opportunity. But I understand that there's people that disagree with that. I just think, though, that if they go unbeaten and they beat the teams they were supposed to, and there were some quality wins that were mixed in there, then why are we holding them out?
It's not their fault. They're in the conference they are based on how college football has changed, but they're about to be able to eliminate part of that by being a part of the Big 12, most likely by the summer of 2023.
Do I think they'd be undefeated in the Big 12? No, I do not. I think they'd probably have at least one loss and maybe even a couple. I don't think that, though, by any means they'd jump in the Big 12 this year and lose like 3 or 4 games, but I do think that like an Oklahoma State would jump up and bite them, or perhaps a Baylor or an Oklahoma, someone along those lines. But I think they would do really, really well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they would be very competitive, and they would be. I mean, if they were in this league right now, we might be sitting here saying, well,
yeah, they might be in the mix today.
Cincinnati's got to beat Kansas State or whoever they be playing today to they would be in the mix. I think they would. They're a really good team. Luke Fickell's not been messing around there since he's been
Wesley Lindley, Morning Boys, the longtime Tech fan, found you guys once the realignment talk happened. Love the content. But for today, I have to say Wreckham. I get it. Let's see. From Joey Kelly, Cincinnati would definitely be undefeated, though, if they're in the Pac-12 or the ACC. And we don't know that, but, yeah, they would have a better chance than those 2 conferences with who they are this year.
Well, BYU would be undefeated if they were in the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, they are undefeated, right? Yeah. Go ahead, Craig.
No, it's in this moment.
Okay. Also, from Joey, I don't think Cincinnati's better than Oklahoma State, and I think they would have plenty of competition and a competitive game with Baylor, K-State, Iowa State, Oklahoma. Speaking of the Big 12 yesterday, Kansas State in Austin lost to Texas, so UT gets to 5-7. Kansas State loses, and Will Howard had a long touchdown run in that game, but Texas made plays, about 3 or 4 fourth down stops that helped them seal that game, or at least win that game as well. And TCU beaten up by Iowa State yesterday afternoon as well.
That was an abomination of a coaching job by Chris Kleiman. It really was. I think he coached them out of that game. I don't want to take away any credit from Texas. They had their backs against the wall. They had not much of a crowd behind them and not much excitement, and they were able to avoid an 0-7 losing streak and at least go into the offseason with a positive outcome, which they haven't had in almost 2 months now. So I think you're about to see Texas go into full rebuild mode. I think we're going to see them go hit that transfer portal and recruiting very, very hard. I mean, they hit recruiting hard anyways, but I really do think we're going to see kind of a completely made over roster and maybe even some staff at Texas next year. So that's what they're in store for now. And, Iowa State, that was a cool scene with Matt Campbell, all the emotions that he had. That's a super senior class that he's, saying goodbye to yesterday at home. So for them to go out and win on their senior day, that was very fitting. And what you would love to see as an Iowa State fan, and that's a special senior class they have. And that's why, he can say whatever he wants to. It's a disappointing year overall because of all those guys he was crying, saying goodbye to yesterday. I mean, he's not going to have a group like that in probably the foreseeable future. But that was a good win for Iowa State. They needed that in a major way. But, that Chris Kleiman, I got nothing but respect for him, but they totally botched that yesterday. I mean, that was a terrible job coaching, in my opinion.
I think Deuce Vaughn's a great player. I mean, he's as exciting as anybody else in the Big 12. And you don't, though, want to run him in the middle of two big, huge defensive and offensive linemen to try to pick up a yard. That's not his style. During a game when it's kind of wide open, the tempo's going well, fine. But they did that, and then they just the one where they went for it on their 30. Dave Aranda's done that. But when you do that, and you still have a chance later in the game. I didn't like some of the calls, but Kleiman, I think, did mess up an opportunity there.
He said after the game at one point, I think, we should be able to get a yard. And it's like, yeah, but not all the time in certain situations. Like, yeah, you should be able to just line up and get a yard, but there's a reason why not everybody or hardly anyone always goes for it on 4th and 1. Everybody should feel like they should get a yard, but you also have to realize the situation, where you are, et cetera. And I just don't – it was almost like they were trying to force things yesterday rather than just being smart. It was like they were trying to just force that yard to be, converted. And I don't know. I was scratching my head in certain situations. But I'm not taking away from Texas. Good for them. They really needed that win in a major way. So, unexpected, but not really. I thought Texas was going to win, remember? And I said that entirely because Skylar Thompson was hurt. I just don't think that K-State's anywhere near the same team when he's unavailable. Doesn't matter who you put back there. If it's not Skylar Thompson, they're just not the same, and that was very evident yesterday.
All right, we probably need to break.
Yeah, sure.
And we will hear as well from Eddie Lackey, former Baylor linebacker, who will be honored today by the B Association to be a part of those ceremonies that they have throughout the game and throughout the year. Former linebacker who was a part of the team when they won a Big 12 championship in 2013, junior college player from California who has ties to Dave Aranda when Aranda was at Hawaii and recruiting Eddie Lackey to play for Hawaii.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, and we'll have that as well today. We'll get into yesterday's scores, but also today, the games that matter other than the ones we've brought up, the Baylor, Texas Tech game, Oklahoma State, and Ohio State against, of course, Michigan in the Big House as well. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Masters of barbecue, kings of crazy good food, and the perfect sanctuary for sports, beer, and barbecue is Coach's XXX Smoke on Austin Avenue in downtown Waco and also on Highway 84 in McGregor. A menu filled with choices like a great offensive playbook, including 3 meat combos with sides, burgers, and sandwiches, wings, loaded giant spuds, and salads, crazy wings, chicken poppers, big boy fries, and smoking quesadillas, just some of their amazing appetizers. There's Coach Big Ol' Draft Beer, or order Zach's Spicy Bloody Mary or Coach's margaritas and mimosas while watching your favorite team play. Great pecan smoked barbecue, fun atmosphere with attention to detail, including a catering menu, and we'll quote your price to fit your budget. Coach's XXX Smoke on Austin Avenue in downtown Waco and walking distance to the great places to shop and enjoy, and also the original location on Highway 84 in McGregor. Great food, great price, great fun. Eat where the locals eat.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, family-owned and operated must-visit pizza place in Waco. Fantastic pizza by the slice or get the whole pie to share. Great happy hour specials every single day, and it's not just pizza. Great wings. You have to try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, pizza pillows, and more. Dine in for a great hangout or carry-out. Order online at shortyspizzashack.com or do yourself a favor and bring your crew to the restaurant at 12th and Bagby. Shorty's Pizza Shack. Tell them Paul sent you by.
Hey, this is Bryce Petty, former starting quarterback and two-time Big 12 champion, and I know firsthand the importance of being in top shape both on and off the field. So listen up, men. If you're feeling beat down day in and day out and looking for that high-performance edge that separates the men from the boys, then look no further than the Petty Clinic Low T in Waco. Petty Clinic is a comprehensive men's healthcare clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Board-certified Dr. Kent Petty has a special interest in offering the highest quality medical care to men of all ages. Some of the services offered include screening and treatment for low testosterone or thyroid, infertility, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, while offering comprehensive wellness exams and complete men's health lab panels. High performance men, remember, it's not just a Petty thing. This is Bryce Petty, encouraging you to reach out and Google search Petty Clinic Low T or go to pettycliniclowt.com and get your complimentary lab screening today.
Baylor University is where lights shine bright. So, let there be light. Let there be roommates and teammates, scholarship and championships. Let there be fresh starts and new traditions, fast friendships and lasting impacts. Let there be laughter. Let there be joy. Let there be light. Baylor University, where lights shine bright.
Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Call us on the BetUS hotline, 254-339-1122.
We'll have our interview with Eddie Lackey, former Baylor linebacker, in the next hour. We're going to take you up until, golly, it's an earlier game again. Been a bundle. I know fans get a little frustrated with the 11 o'clock kicks. I personally, in our position, even when we had late games in high school football or road trips coming back from Dallas and got home at 10 or 11 or 12 or 1, I like them because you can go enjoy the game, go be a part of the game in whatever capacity, and then you still have pretty much the rest of the day to enjoy your day. And I do, at times, would like to sleep in an extra 30 minutes or an hour, but I'm fine with it.
Give me 11 a.m. kicks or 6 p.m. kicks.
Give me life.
Give me death. Yeah, give me those. The middle of the day is just a headache. Because then you don't, if the game is in the middle of the day that you're covering, you really don't get to see all of anything else. You don't get to see all the late games. You don't get to see all the early games.
Yeah.
So if there's one game you wanted to watch that was either late or early, you don't get to see all of it other than the game that you're covering. So, yeah,
All right, Craig wanted to mention something here to start this segment.
Yeah. What do y'all think about all the smoke around Lincoln Riley and LSU, at least in terms of social media, which, you could say there's some weight to it or not. I just saw Glenn Gilboa, who writes about LSU. He's also, I think, the one that the headline about Dave Aranda is in the lead, even though the actual article said nothing of the sort. So I haven't read the actual article other than his headline, but it's feeding into the Lincoln Riley LSU stuff. And I think after the Aranda, segment with Joel Klatt and what you reported last week, and then what Thamel and all those guys just, I guess confirmed really. They kind of eliminated him from the mix, I think, and so LSU fans sort of going, what direction are we going? Now, I don't know if Aranda's even one of their top 3 or 5 to begin with, and I know there's still a lot of talk about, LSU still just holding out hope on Jimbo to have a change of heart or something, but the big rumor in the last 24 to 48 hours has been Lincoln Riley to LSU, at least on social media. How much stock do y'all actually put into that? Do you believe it in any way? What do you think about the idea to begin with, et cetera?
I believe that they have an AD in Scott Woodward who will swing for the fences given the chance. I mean, look, I wouldn't put it past him to call an NFL coach if he thought that was the guy he was going to get. I mean, I'm surprised that Joe Brady is not top of their list at LSU, considering the best season they've ever had in their history was when he was coaching their offense, and that includes 2 other national championships. But I don't know. LSU's a great job, but so is Oklahoma. I mean, they're
more Heisman, more national titles, an easier path. Et cetera.
Well, until two years
more years from now,
but
one maybe. I don't know.
And so, if you're going to the SEC anyway, and you're Lincoln Riley, what does LSU offer you other than money? I don't know.
And really, do they offer that? I keep seeing the money thing. do people not think Oklahoma has any money?
I know, other than and like that. This thing
they're about to have to spend a lot of it to get out of it.
But it's money right now. So like that's all it is, because it'd just be money right now in the short term, as where you couldn't. Oklahoma's.
I can understand if you're saying like, well, Baylor can't match LSU, but Oklahoma. Why couldn't Oklahoma match LSU?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, although there does come a point that you wonder, because one of the, again, it's all just rumors, but one of the rumors had it to where he's making $10 million a year, $12 million a year, something crazy. I would really hope LSU doesn't do that just for the sake of college football, because that is just that is just an awful decision. And at some point, if you're Oklahoma or whoever, when's enough? You know what I mean? That's the thing.
What's happened, and it happens, and we've even seen this now happen in women's basketball because of changes. And we've seen it happen, of course, in men's basketball and also football. All these changes, and even some of the non-blue blood supposedly programs keeping and retaining their coaches, they're now getting more money because of rumors and speculation and because of so many blue bloods that have openings. This is going to spike it. There will be the next $10 million a year. I know Jimbo Fisher has the long extension. And even with that, there has been speculation that Woodward is going to make him say no 100 times. I think you're about to see the first $10 million a year average coach. And whether it's Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma or Lincoln Riley at LSU, here's my thing. LSU's won 3 national titles with 3 different coaches, and they have one from back in the day. Oklahoma's a bigger, better, tradition-rich, with more Heismans and more national titles and across the board. Now, I know LSU's got a lot. I'm not saying one or the other. You kind of juggle, but when you're already at one of them, what is the lure unless there's something going on behind the scenes that we're not so sure of?
Yes, and that's what I was telling family this week. They were asking, like, why would Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma for LSU? It's a sideways move. And I know one person has probably already hit the chat room about the recruiting aspect of it. And yes, there's more Louisiana recruits closer to home than there are Oklahoma recruits closer to home. Louisiana has far more talent, but Lincoln Riley recruits well nationally. Caleb Williams is from California. Kennedy Brooks is from Texas. You can look across the roster and basically hit almost all 50 states. So I don't think recruiting is really an issue for Oklahoma. I don't think that's why they've not been able to break through in the playoff. You could argue that maybe some of it on the line, although they have really good O-lines, that maybe they just don't have that SEC talent defensively is maybe what's missing, but they're going to be there in a couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, the money whip part, I don't think that's it, unless LSU is just to reach a point where Oklahoma's even like, okay, this is just insane. Like, we're not gonna reach that. But the only other thing it could be, because I don't think the recruiting aspect is that much of a push that you would basically go sideways, would be if there's an administration issue, and there's been nothing to indicate that. But outside of that, I don't know what his motive would be. I really don't, unless he just wants a new challenge, and that recruiting piece is that essential. But again, I don't think that's such a big deal for somebody who already recruits nationally anyway. Well, so I don't know. I just don't think it makes a ton of sense.
Here's another thing about for Scott Woodward. And okay, of the last 3 coaches that have won national titles, one of them is the greatest college football coach that's ever lived, in Nick Saban. Okay, so we've got that. Okay, take Nick Saban out of it, because that was a really long time ago in comparison to the other 2. In Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, you got titles from guys who would not have won titles anywhere else. And you did not have to break the bank to get Les Miles or Ed Orgeron. So if you're Scott Woodward trying to win the press conference and make a splash hire at LSU, doesn't necessarily need to happen. Just hire the right guy in the right moment. And does that have to be Lincoln Riley or Jimbo Fisher or Dave Aranda or, Jesus Christ himself comes down and coaches LSU? Doesn't have to be. You could find a good assistant on the rise. For example, Joe Brady, who was just there and helped you have the best offensive season and the best season in your history. Maybe he wants to be an NFL coach. I don't know. But I don't know why you wouldn't call that guy. Or Billy Napier, who's probably going to go to one of your rivals in Florida, who's been winning in your state anyway.
I know Joe Brady was a hot name here recently. I don't know what the view is of him as a college coach, or even if he's interested in that. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to make a phone call. And the Napier thing, I really don't understand. And that's what's so interesting about the LSU side of things is that seems just like a no-brainer if other guys aren't going to take the job. But it also sure seems like, just reading the tea leaves on social media, which is really all we have, that and message boards, is that, Billy Napier to Florida looks like it's chugging on down the tracks. And I'm just very curious when all this ends up to see who LSU ends up with and how we got to where we got to. You know what I mean? Whether that's a Billy Napier ultimately, Jimbo, which I'm not putting a lot of stock into, or Lincoln Riley, or whoever it ends up being. I'm very curious to hear the background from Scott Woodward's point of view on, if we ever do hear that, on kind of how this all unfolded for them.
All right, the chat room is going on. A couple of you have brought up, the Nebraska finished 3-9. They broke records, 8 losses of a touchdown or less, 1-8 in the conference, and they scored as many points as they gave up. Yeah, it was a tough day. And again, I want to say one thing about it. And we spend too much time on them, maybe because that's my favorite team, even when they break my heart.
Or maybe it's a comedy aspect to the show.
Well, I think it is. I saw somebody take the top of the Nebraska state map, and it's like their winning percentage during a game, and it goes like this, like that. Nebraska, Tom Osborne in Nebraska had great football for 40 years or however long it was, and Devaney before him. As good as they were on offense, as good as they were on defense, do you know how great they were with special teams? And how Scott Frost played for Tom Osborne and doesn't have a special teams coach is beyond me, and that's almost by itself a fireable offense. I know he's been extended, and I'm okay with that. I know they've been close. They've also lost to Illinois, Purdue, and also Minnesota. But how you have screwed up so many plays, from missed field goals and extra points to a punt to the wrong side of the field when your coverage was on the right, you kick it left to lose to Michigan State. And then yesterday, a block punt. You weren't ready for that? I don't think anyone's ever ready for a block punt. But you have to know they have to turn the game around. You have to have extra protection.
Even great teams can be derailed by a lack of focus on special teams. I think that was outside of the off-the-field things that happen. So let me preface by saying this. I hate that I have to do this all the time. But Art Briles as a head coach, I think his one major flaw is he did not give a crap about special teams, really. And in the games where the teams that were as good as them were playing them, it hurt them. And when you're Nebraska and you're not as good as almost anybody you're playing, it's really going to hurt you. And, those little things, it's college football's momentum. There's, most teams are about the same throughout the country. There's a few good ones, there's a few bad ones, and a bunch of people in the middle. And if you want to be one of the good ones, you got to do the little things right.
Well, special teams didn't make the quarterback throw bad passes and also fumble the football. I mean, that backup was what was his name?
Smothers.
He looked like a deer in the headlights when I was watching stretches of the game.
Especially when the game started to close in.
He completely just, his throat started closing up on him in the fourth quarter, no doubt about it. And I was sitting there watching it with my sister, and she was just like, here's my takeaway. It wasn't anything about Scott Frost or special teams or the quarterback play or whatever, although you could see them tightening as the game went on. It was that I've never seen a football team find more ways to lose in just the dumbest of ways. Like, I've never seen a team find this many ways to lose football games. And just the most absurd, there's 5 games this year where you just go, there's no freaking way that they just did that right there. And it happens.
Muff punts.
I'm talking, muff punts. And
in a critical part of the game.
Yeah,
too.
It's always at the worst possible time. I've just never, you might see a team do it once or twice. But even Kansas, at their worst, they were just bad. They're just bad. They weren't in a game and then a play happened and they were out of it. Nebraska's not a terrible football team, but they make the worst god-awful mistakes at the worst times every single week. It's unbelievable, dude, if you haven't watched them. It's unbelievable the way they find how they find to lose football games. I've never seen anything like it.
All right, it's 9:52. This is Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports, and now there's some of the discussion as well about that, and there should be, because it was an abomination again yesterday. Also, the Master 24-29. Oklahoma won the national championship a decade ago. Now we have Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, LSU, and Clemson, who have been winning the national titles since that time. Florida State, of course, had theirs with Jameis Winston as well. Who will be the next head coach at USC from Joel?
Actually, Oklahoma won it 2 decades ago. They won it 21 years ago. That was their last national title. You might think they've won one because they've played for about 8 of them since then and have gone 0 for 8. And not quite 8 times, but you know what? Not that far off either in the last 20 years.
It's 21 years ago.
21 years ago.
Yeah. So the Big 12, the last national title they had was in 2005. And that took a once-in-a-lifetime quarterback that was beyond anything anyone has ever probably seen before.
And the greatest finish of all time. And,
And a couple of things they had to have go their way, like a 4th down stop, even with him. And then him taking them down the field. It's been since 2005. Alabama and Texas in 2009, I know UT fans will bring that up, and Colt McCoy, they lost the game. Even though I know they had a hell of a team. They also could have lost to Ndamukong Suh in Nebraska a few weeks prior to that. 2005.
Okay. So it took Texas the once-in-a-lifetime player and the once-in-a-lifetime game. Thinking about that Oklahoma team, there was really nothing.
Nobody.
That's, I think, one of the more special ones probably in Oklahoma's history, in that there was not, like, nobody on that Oklahoma team was once in a lifetime necessarily. I mean, Josh Heupel's not a once in a lifetime quarterback. The quarterbacks that they've had after him were all way better and winning Eisner trophies. That was just a once in a lifetime team, and they knew how to capitalize on the moment better than maybe many teams in history. Like, they knew this is the moment in the game where we're going to take this thing over, and they did that over and over again. And the fact that you said it was 21 years ago means my college years were that long ago. Every time I hear that, my college years, since then, my college years could have had another college years. They'd be going to college right now. That's it. That's how it is.
Well, whoever they are, they probably have graduated.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, let's take a break.
No, we had the question about what coaching job, USC?
USC, well, who's going to get USC?
Man, I have no idea at this point. I have no real idea. I know that Washington State looks like they're going to promote. Good win for Washington State over Washington, and looks like they're not going to have to look far to find their next guy, so that's great. But as far as USC goes, man, I really have no idea. I mean, once the James Franklin thing got stamped out, right? I mean, that kind of eliminated a big possibility. And then Dave Aranda, I mean, with his comments, or not even so much his comments, but more so just the media's comments and what you said last week that they followed up on, I mean, he doesn't appear to be headed there. I don't even know how high up on their list he would be anyways. But, I mean, outside of that, yeah, I really have no idea what USC is going to do. I don't even know like who the big candidate is at this point for USC. And so maybe others who have been. I mean, I feel like I've been watching the coaching carousel as close as possible, but I may have missed out on some USC talk. So if there's a name out there that's being bandied about or that makes a lot of sense, please pass along, because I don't know.
Rod Webb, by the way, on the text, Bear Force, he said, he sent this to us before I read the text from the 281 about ADs and coaches and everyone, and that just this thing's gotten out of control with leaving even before you're done with the current commitment when it comes to coaching changes or whatever. He said, also, I texted you before you read that other text. I agree with the guy. He also left this out. Fans and alums too pushy, wanting to push people out if there isn't instant success. You can make fun of what Trev Alberts did with Nebraska and Scott Frost at 3-9, and believe me, I can't imagine after 4 years he's still going to be around. But maybe that is, in some cases, the right thing to do, because what are you going to do? If he's not going to win there, who is? Nick Saban, maybe. You're not going to get Nick Saban. You're not going to get Dabo Swinney. You're not going to get most of those names because you're no longer that place. And even when you did win, Bob Devaney came from Wyoming. Tom Osborne was a Nebraska alum and played there. And think about that. And so did Frank Solich. So anytime they've gone outside the program to get somebody to help them, it hasn't worked. So I don't know if anyone's going to win there again, honestly, the way they are.
I mean, somebody will eventually be the right guy. I'm so stupid. Matt Campbell, Matt Campbell, I mean, I was talking about this with my sister's boyfriend just yesterday or the night before. Matt Campbell. I don't know why that was escaping me when we were talking about that, but it sure does seem like that's where a lot of the smoke is right now. So that's who I would say. I don't know why I blanked, but I'd say Matt Campbell.
Randy Peterson, who's been on our show before, one of the Iowa State writers and guys who covers them, asked him, I saw a tweet, I need to find this again, but he asked him a few questions. Like, Matt Campbell currently does not have an agent. He's that guy who I think has an agent when he wants to negotiate a contract and then doesn't have one. So he says he has not talked to anybody and has not hired an agent, but that all sounds like exactly what you say when you're about to leave a place. But because we don't leave, the most honest coaches in the world still lie because they have to. We can't. It's not. It's not life or death.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That's why they can lie.
Mack Rhodes told us not last Tuesday, but this week's Tuesday, but 2 weeks ago, he said that he doesn't deal with agents. Now, I'm sure that at some point there gets to that point, especially when he talks about coaches. Like he mentioned that about his relationship with Dave Aranda. Yes, Dave Aranda has a big-name agent. Yes, Mack Rhodes probably has his own in some ways. But as far as what's going on currently, some don't. And that's kind of refreshing in some ways as well. All right, so we know about what what Michigan and Ohio State mean today. We understand that it's to win the Eastern Division, right, of the Big Ten. It's to play whoever, Iowa or Wisconsin, in the championship game. And Iowa winning yesterday at 10-2, they were underdogs to a team that was 3-8 and almost did lose, but of course they found a way like everyone else has as well. What is the other big game nationally in college football other than Oklahoma and also Oklahoma State, and I've brought them up as well? There's some rivalry games, Paul. I know you'll have a focus on Florida State, Florida trying to have a chance. A&M plays at LSU, a night game in Baton Rouge as the Aggies try to finish at 9-3. Houston's going to play next week against Cincinnati. That could end up being one hell of a game for the American Conference Championship, but they have to finish it up, and they should, against a 1-10. Obviously, UConn and Alabama Auburn is today as well.
I'm going to say this is another one from outside the Power 5, but UTSA and North Texas today. You know, I think UTSA got their scare against UTEP, so I kind of feel bad for North Texas. But Seth Luttrell going for bowl eligibility here if he can upset UTSA. So they're going to get the Mean Green's best shot there at Apogee Stadium in Denton. So I'm kind of interested to see how that game plays out.
Ole Miss, first time ever, 10 wins. They dominated Mississippi State, even though it was 31-21. They were the best. Rodgers threw 58 passes for Mississippi State as they tried to come from behind and scored 15 points in the fourth quarter. So a hell of a win for Ole Miss and a hell of a year at 10-2 for them as well. Cincinnati took care of their business against East Carolina. When we come back, Eddie Lackey being honored today by Baylor. A couple of times he was a part of Baylor, and what they did to build from was no bowls for over almost 2 decades to what they did and eventually getting to bowl games and winning a Big 12 title. He's next. Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.
Masters of barbecue, kings of crazy good food, and the perfect sanctuary for sports, beer, and barbecue is Coach's XXX Smoak on Austin Avenue in downtown Waco and also on Highway 84 in McGregor. A menu filled with choices like a great offensive playbook, including 3 meat combos with sides, burgers, and sandwiches, wings, loaded giant spuds, and salads, crazy wings, chicken poppers, big boy fries, and smoking quesadillas, just some of their amazing appetizers. There's Coach Big Ol' Draft Beer, or order Zach's Spicy Bloody Mary, or Coach's margaritas and mimosas while watching your favorite team play. Great pecan smoked barbecue, fun atmosphere with attention to detail, including a catering menu, and we'll quote your price to fit your budget. Coach's XXX Smoak on Austin Avenue in downtown Waco, and walking distance to the great places to shop and enjoy, and also the original location on Highway 84 in McGregor. Great food, great price, great fun. Eat where the locals eat.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
It's the Black Friday sales event going on now. Come see the beautiful, elegant third-row seat Jeep Grand Cherokee L in stock at Allen Samuels. The 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo or Limited has total values of $3,500 or 0% for 72 months going on now, and no payments for 90 days. First responders get an extra $500 cash. Allen Samuels, located at 201 West Loop 340 in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Born in Waco, Brotherwell Brewing exists to serve the Central Texas community with locally crafted beer of the highest quality. They want to bring Central Texas closer to the brewing experience so everyone can enjoy well-made beer as much as they do. For 2.5 years, they've been bringing high-quality beer to Central Texas at their location on Bridge Street in East Waco. Brotherwell Brewing believes in community and bringing people together to enjoy products made in their community. So for your game day, whether it's a tailgate or at home, stop by Brotherwell Brewing for high-quality craft beer made right here in Central Texas, 400 East Bridge Street, and check them out online at brotherwell.com.
Y'all listen up. Let me tell you something about group meals from Rudy's Barbecue. It's got all you need for all the folks you gotta feed, smoked meat, sides, and more. There's everything down to the tablecloth, just like the one that you see at the store. At a bridal shower, it's better than flowers. And a long distance meeting, it'll pass the hours. It'll feed all the cousins at a family function. It's better than potluck at a church luncheon. Next time you need to feed 10 or more, call and order a Rudy's group meal.
Next in line. Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube.
Eddie Lackey, one of those great players that arrived at Baylor University when they were trying to turn the corner, and he helped them do that. Joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio and also 365 Sports, former Baylor linebacker, being honored this weekend during the Baylor and Texas Tech game Saturday at McLean Stadium. The B Association recognizing you as a football legend. What does that mean to you?
Man, well, I don't really know what to say. I'm very honored for one, but yeah, I definitely an exclusive fraternity there of other guys that are, honored in the past, and one of those being one of my best friends, Bryce Petty, a couple weekends ago. So, to be in that same category as them, I'm just incredibly honored.
Eddie, your journey to Baylor, out of Riverside Community College was, not the conventional one, I guess. And when did Baylor actually come on your radar to come there? Because it was not your first choice when you were thinking about where you were going to go and finish out your eligibility.
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. I was sitting in I want to say it was some kind of health class back in junior college, and I get a text, not that I should be sitting on my phone in a class, but I got a text from my coach, actually Darren Cheverini, the offense coordinator at Colorado right now, and he was head of the recruiting and everything at Riverside City College, and he said, "Hey, you're going to get a text or a call from a 254 number. It's a Waco number. That's Baylor University. They said that they're going to offer you." So I was super excited, but ironically, I had no idea where Baylor was. I didn't know what conference it was in. I really hate to say that, but I pulled it up on my phone, and I had to type in Baylor University, go to the website, go to the athletics page, and sure enough, I scroll down. I'm like, man, Big 12. I hadn't had a Power 5, offer at the time. So that was my first Power 5. And I started to get excited knowing that it was, in Texas and all of these things. And, at that point, I just, I couldn't stop looking up things about Baylor, and Robert was getting all the Heisman, craze. And it was before the Texas game that year in 2011. And so all that to be said, it just, when I talked to Coach Bennett and Coach Gush that same night, I just got real excited. And, I was on with you guys before, and I told you my whole story with Coach Aranda, and I was committed to Coach Aranda at the time going to Hawaii. So I had to give him a call and say, hey, I think I've got to follow my heart here and at least give it a chance to go see Baylor. And once I went to Baylor and went on that visit and everything, I fell in love with everything about it. So that's really what pulled me in, just when I got to the university and toured the campus and all of those things. I mean, I had other offers that came in after, but I was fully sold on going to Baylor at that point.
What a small world, right? I mean, less than 10 years later, and, here's Dave Aranda as head coach at Baylor. It's kind of crazy how things work out. And I have to ask you, I mean, he's already opened up a lot more from just a year ago. He is definitely, just his personality, I think, has shined a lot more. And what was it like to talk to him, though, back then as, still, I would imagine, a pretty shy, kind of reserved assistant coach?
Oh, my gosh. He's... Back at that point, he was actually, I swore he was Hawaiian, just the way that he spoke. Every other word was, bro, I can't wait to have you, bro. Every third word was bro. And it was like, I felt like I was being welcomed into the Hawaiian community, and I was getting all excited, and, that was his cool and calm temper and demeanor, and you never got a rise in his voice. Really talking to him, it was real calm, and it made you feel like you wanted to come out there and go hit the waves with him, go surfing or something. Just the way that he had that calm, that calming, conversational tone. So yeah, but he's definitely watching some of his interviews and listening to him, it's no different from 10 years ago when I was being recruited by him.
Calm conversational tone is the opposite of Phil Bennett. What is do you have a favorite Phil Bennett moment? I know we don't have 5 hours because you could go on forever. We've had him on. He was a weekly guest with us last year and parts of this year until he took the job at North Texas, and they're trying to get bowl eligible. But your thoughts about do you have a favorite Eddie Lackey, Phil Bennett moment?
Oh boy. Yeah, it would probably be, it's a hard choice. There's two, but I would have to go with ULM in 2012 when we were there. And so he'll tell this story forever. And, we're friends on Facebook, and every time we meet up for lunch or something like that, he's got to bring it up. And Coach Gush is the same way. And so I had a lot of moments in that game where, I banged my head around a little bit. And there was a blitz that we ran. It was a pop blitz, and it was just into the B gap, and I was supposed to, stop a goal line play with their quarterback at that time. And I came in at a terrible angle, and we basically went helmet to helmet, and, not saying that we shouldn't, keep the safety of players at the forefront, but, I come off the field, and I had already had a couple tackles in that game where I had just hit my head a couple times, and I'm sitting there, and Coach Bennett is just letting me have it. He said it a couple times. Some of his go-to lines were something along the lines of, "Oh, I wish we never recruited you," or "I'm going to send you back to California." But you can imagine there's a couple of expletives in there, in between all of that.
No, don't.
And but he just, he's going off, and I look up at him and Coach Gush, and I said, "Coach, I'm dizzy. I'm dizzy right now." And they both looked at each other and looked back at me and said, "Dizzy? You're making me dizzy." And just couldn't stop. They just caught me. It caught them so off guard that I said that, and I never heard the end of it. I still don't hear the end of that. And so I get asked every time. Coach Bennett last night wrote on my Facebook, and I posted about I just reshared my award, and Bennett was like, "Are you feeling dizzy, or are you doing okay, Eddie?"
Yeah, and we do understand the seriousness of concussions. We're laughing at the moment and all that kind of stuff. But,
yeah.
Eddie Lackey's going to be honored by the B Association at Baylor's game on Saturday against Texas Tech.
Eddie, what do you think of the linebackers that Baylor has going right now?
Man, how about them? They fly around. I mean, it's a really fun thing to see, and schematically, it's fun to watch, and they I know that just across the board, especially Terrell Bernard and Dylan Doyle, and the whole group as a whole, they fly around, and very assignment sound in how they approach each game, and you can tell that they're dialed in, but it's just fun because they're playmakers, and they find a way to make a play, and that's what I feel like that's what separates the good from great teams and good from great players. Are, the guys that can find a way to make a play when you need it, and they do that. You see those guys, somehow getting through a couple different blocks, shedding a couple of different blocks to make a big sack on third down. And, that's an incredible thing to, set up your offense, when you can make plays like that or come up with a turnover. So, just across the board, they are an awesome unit. And, I've been very impressed.
Eddie, you're living in Abilene right now?
I am, yes.
So is there a lot of talk about Abilene's Abram Smith around town and what he's doing right now? Have you had any conversations in passing by any chance, given his time there, growing up there, and what he's doing right now in Waco?
Oh, yes. I actually, matter of fact, just got my hair cut, and there's some people talking about Abram in there and saying that they went to high school at Abilene High, and I'm wearing a Baylor hoodie right now. So it's a hot topic here in Abilene. I mean, people that have never followed Baylor are turning on Baylor games that want to watch Abram, and for a very good reason. He's an exciting player to watch, and Abilene as a community, they're loving it. And I run into people all the time. Anytime I'm wearing something Baylor, I feel like they're not talking about me, or they don't. There's no connection there. My time has came and gone, and it's been a long time. But they always bring up Abram, and he's a legend here in Abilene. I would say at this point, there's a lot of people, chattering about him, and rightfully so.
There's always something was meant to be, or there's ways that past journeys are hit fork road. Paul mentioned a little bit about your recruitment and all that. You mentioned that as well. What did coming to Baylor end up meaning to you as a person?
I don't even know where to begin with that. I think my first and foremost would be my faith, and I think that's what Baylor did for me is made me a man of faith. And gosh, I met my wife there, and it just set the stage for my life, and with business and everything. The journey has taken me to where I'm at, and I can't see that, if I would have gone anywhere else. Like it made so much sense. It makes so much sense after the fact, that Baylor was just the right place for me and all the people that were in my corner. And, it did so much for my life, and it continues to do that, moving forward. And I get asked about it all the time, and I can't say enough good things about Baylor University.
All right. Well, we can't let you go without jumping into this bodybuilding thing, Eddie.
Oh no!
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, we have to talk about it. Look, you transformed and all that. I have a couple questions. One, how did it get started? Are you still doing it? And three, how long do you have to spray tan to get that coloration?
A very long time, a whole week. No. So I do different challenges, and I'm a little competitive, as you might imagine. And every year, kind of since I've been done playing football, I've kind of wanted to do a different challenge each year. And my wife swears it's every time we have another baby, and she's pregnant and I'm training for something. But last time it was a marathon I was training for and doing a bunch of Spartan races. This time was a bodybuilding show, and it's not something I want to do long term. It was just I trained for 6 months for it, and it was the most terrible thing of my life. It was terrible. And to think that I was at my most at Baylor, I was at 230. You want to know what I went down to when I stepped on the stage for that show? I was 181 pounds. Jeez. And it's just crazy what those guys that do that as a career, what they go through. And talk about no energy. You're just lethargic. You're trying to just get through the day. And I can't do that. I mean, that was just something I wanted to be able to get a picture of and see me at my absolute best physique I could have. And, I did something, it's called men's physique. So, it's with board shorts and all that. You don't have the whole mankini situation going on and, all that fun stuff. But, which also I didn't have to worry about the legs. So that was kind of nice, but all that to be said, it was just a challenge, that I wanted to take part in. And, I didn't place like I wanted to or anything, but it was still something to be proud of for me. So, yeah.
What was the first thing you ate afterwards?
I was going to say, how much did you eat? Like a couple of double cheeseburgers from Whataburger or what? Yeah.
Talk about full circle. It was funny. I got a call from Coach Bennett right after that show, and the show was in College Station. And, this was before the season had started and everything. And he gave me a call, and he's like, "What are you doing to yourself?" And he's like, "You want to?" He wanted to go get dinner, and I told him, the one thing that I've been dying to have over this whole time, this 6 months of training, is a barbecue chicken pizza from BJ's. Mm-hmm. And I wanted the Suzuki, the whole thing, chips and salsa. So he met up with me and a few other guys, and we went to BJ's, and I crushed an entire pizza. But your body can only handle so much when you've only been eating like 1,300 calories every day for the last 6 weeks before that. So it wasn't as good of a time as I thought it would be afterwards.
Former Baylor linebacker Eddie Lackey honored Saturday during the Texas Tech game with us on 365 Sports.
Well, that's cool that you did it and you got that experience, and now and you can cross that off the list or whatever. But that's cool. You did all that and put all that work in. Eddie, with it being Texas Tech, I have to ask you about your first game against Texas Tech. It was a wild one. Like looking back at just the box score for that game, overtime, you had 2 picks in the fourth quarter, a pick 6 right at the beginning to give you guys the lead, and then a pick later on. It ended up resulting in a missed field goal, and you guys went to OT. But just what do you remember about that game? Remember about your 2 picks there in the fourth quarter and going to overtime and eventually pulling out a big win, 52-45.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of games at Baylor, it's hard for me to not think that was one of my best games. Tackling wise, I didn't do that great, but as funny as it sounds, I don't do this all the time, but I pulled it up on, they've got all the recordings on YouTube. I pulled that game up last night, and my wife Cassidy wanted to see it. I don't think we had really sat down to see, watch that game before, and it gave me some brownie points with her too. So I thought I'd pull it up, but it was, that was also special to me too, because my former teammates at the junior college at Riverside City College were, there's a few of them on that team that I had just played with the season before. So that was the first time we were matching up against each other. Darren Cheverini, who was my coach at the junior college, was their special teams coordinator there. So the whole thing, it was just like, it was fun that I was able to have a game like that against them, and be able to talk a little smack after the game too. But it was definitely a wild finish, and winning in overtime was, that was a whole experience in itself. But I think that was probably my best game that I've ever had. I had a fumble recovery in that game too. And just as far as turnovers, I had 3 turnovers in that game. So I had a lot of, I had a couple of my friends, on the other team that were a little bitter, but one was just like, man, why'd you have to do that? And, we had to have a long conversation the next morning. So it was, it was a good time. 26 starts every game at Baylor, a part of the junior college group that came in under Phil Bennett at defensive coordinator, along with KJ Morton, Joe Williams, among some others as well, that helped turn that team around and start to get enough stops on defense, and then got to a point in 2012 where they upset number 1 ranked Kansas State and turned their season around. Eddie, congratulations, man. We'll be there. Looking forward to it. Enjoy the moment, okay? Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you.
You too. Great always hearing from Eddie Lackey, now living in Abilene, as he mentioned, former Baylor linebacker, 2-time All Big 12 linebacker, and Dave Aranda was recruiting him.
Yeah,
Masters of Barbecue, kings of crazy good food, and the perfect sanctuary for sports, beer, and barbecue is Coach's XXX Smoak on Austin Avenue in downtown Waco and also on Highway 84 in McGregor. A menu filled with choices like a great offensive playbook, including 3 meat combos with sides, burgers, and sandwiches, wings, loaded giant spuds, and salads, crazy wings, chicken poppers, big boy fries, and smoking quesadillas, just some of their amazing appetizers. There's Coach Big Ol' Draft Beer, or order Zach's Spicy Bloody Mary or Coach's margaritas and mimosas while watching your favorite team play. Great pecan smoked barbecue, fun atmosphere with attention to detail, including a catering menu, and we'll quote your price to fit your budget. Coach's XXX Smoak on Austin Avenue in downtown Waco, and walking distance to the great places to shop and enjoy, and also the original location on Highway 84 in McGregor. Great food, great price, great fun. Eat where the locals eat.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
At long last, it's time for some college football. Bird Collision Ford proudly supports the Baylor Bears as they take the field this season. Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Collision Ford. We have some great vehicles available this season as well, so come check out our winning lineup of new Fords. Let's cheer the Bears on to victory and celebrate by buying a new or pre-owned car, truck, or SUV. Visit us anytime at bkford.com. Buying made simple at BK Ford. Sic 'em Bears.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and soon to open in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, hand or wrist injuries, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trusts. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is Sikkim 365 Radio. Text us at 254-339-1122. The Sikkim 365 Radio text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
All right, as we close it out today, we're going to run just a couple of minutes, maybe a couple of minutes late. Craig's got a list of the seniors who will be introduced today in the last home game at McLean Stadium, and also a more important nugget on Baylor quarterback Gary Bohannon.
Yeah, Darby Brown, who's one of the local TV folks here for KWTX, she just put up a tweet, a picture of Gary Bohannon warming up, fully dressed out, standing next to Blake Shapen, Nikki Lattarulo, as well from KCEN. She put out a tweet just now as well, showing some video. So Bohannon looks like he's gearing up, looks like he's ready to go. Doesn't appear to have any, big padding or anything like that. I don't even know what you do for a hamstring, but he's out there and he's warming up. So if Gary Bohannon could play today, obviously that would be huge news, and at least you're making Tech think about it a little bit right now as you have a half hour till game time. So that's obviously of note. And I don't have a list of the seniors being introduced. I have a list of the seniors not being introduced.
Okay.
You know Terrell Bernard and Jalen Petrie and all those guys, they're all being introduced on senior day. But of more interest, because that's all expected, are the names that are seniors on the roster but are not listed on senior day. And that list is wide receiver Josh Fleeks, who – I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a Tech with Joey McGuire, honestly, or back at Baylor. I mean, either way. But Josh Fleeks not being introduced. On the offensive line alone, not listed as on senior day, but listed as seniors on the roster, Grant Miller, Jacob Gall, Khalil Keith, Mose Jeffrey, and Connor Galvin. If they're coming back, and I'm not saying that all these guys are coming back, but why else you wouldn't be introduced on senior day, I have no idea. That would be obviously, that's almost a starting offensive line right there. Mm-hmm. Tight end Christoph Henley, defensive tackle Cole Maxwell, defensive lineman Chidi Ogbonnaya, linebacker Bryson Jackson, and safety Christian Morgan. Those are all names that are seniors on the roster, but not being listed as seniors today for senior day. So that's of interest, obviously, because that means those guys could potentially be coming back, and I would say if they got all of those guys back, that would be a ridiculous haul. Mm-hmm. Just the offensive line alone, but that would be a ridiculous haul, so that's something to take note of, and one of us probably needs to ask Aranda about that after the game.
And the other thing about it, you mentioned Bryson Jackson. Here's a guy in the last month has really started to make a name for himself and maybe see some more playing time next year because, look, linebackers are not. Look, Dylan Doyle's back, and he's maybe back as a senior, like you just mentioned, Craig, but Petrie, Bernard couldn't hold it. Sorry, guys. Gone. There's no cough video thing, but the back, that would be good. I mean, that would be
it would be unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely. I hope you're okay, man. All right.
I was trying to stop it.
I think we all had predicted Texas Tech and Baylor. The score, I think I said 30-16. Bohannon playing or not would have been my prediction. Craig, your thoughts real quick, and then we got to go, both of you guys.
I'm taking Baylor by at least a couple of scores. I think especially the weather's actually not too bad, but it is a little bit rainy, so I'll take the team that's got the better running game and the better offensive line. I think that's Baylor. If Gary Bohannon plays and is fully healthy, then I feel even better about it, but I like Baylor in this game.
Whoever plays quarterback, I like Baylor in this game by 10 to 17 to 21 points.
All right, thank you to those on the text line, even you Ralph, huh?
You?
I said 30-16.
Okay.
Armstrong Sims, thank you. We'll have our halftime cut-in, I believe, from Brian Etheridge at some point. And Paul will be here for the post-game show following Baylor and Tech as we watch the final regular season weekend of college football and then the conference championship weekend. And maybe we'll be at AT&T Stadium. Who knows? I'm David Smoak. Thank you. Enjoy the games. Good afternoon, or actually good morning, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports.